Black Hollow was not born corrupt. It was trained. Trained to look the other way when trucks drove to the river at night. Trained to ignore the coughs of children and the rashes on their skin. Trained to believe that silence was safety. People didn't lie in Black Hollow. They simply didn't speak. That was how the town survived. And that was why Mara Crow had to die. Elias Crow had lived his entire life as background noise. He was the man you nodded at but never remembered. The man who worked late, paid his bills, fixed his fence, and never caused trouble. At the steel mill, supervisors forgot his name even after years. At diners, waitresses asked him the same questions every time. He did not mind. Elias believed invisibility was peace. Then he married Mara. And peace ended. Mara did not belong in Black Hollow. She spoke with her hands. She laughed too loudly. She asked why when everyone else accepted because. She taught elementary school and noticed patterns others ignored. Too many children sick. Too many absences. Too many parents whispering the same fears but never saying them out loud. When she brought it up in the teacher's lounge, the room went quiet. Don't, someone warned her. Mara smiled. Don't what? Don't dig. Mara dug anyway. It started with the river. The Black Hollow River was supposed to be clean, at least on paper. The Mills reports said so. The council signed off on it every year. But Mara stood at the bank one afternoon and watched foam collect near the rocks, unnatural and pale. She filled bottles. She took photographs. She logged dates and smells and times. When she sent the samples to an independent lab, the results came back worse than she imagined. Heavy metals. Industrial solvents. Long-term carcinogens. She showed Elias. He stared at the pages for a long time. People will get hurt if you push this, he said quietly. Mara touched his face. People are already getting hurt. The first warning came disguised as kindness. Sheriff Donnelly met Mara outside the school one afternoon, leaning against his patrol car like he belonged there, which he did. You're a good teacher, he said. Thank you, Mara replied. You care about kids. Yes. That's why you should stop asking questions. His voice never rose. His smile never faded. That night, Elias begged her to stop. For the first time in their marriage, Mara didn't agree. Mara went to the police. Her report vanished. She went to the town council. They postponed the meeting. She sent evidence to the state. Someone leaked her name. From that moment on, the town changed. Cars slowed near their house. Phones went silent. Friends avoided eye contact. Victor Hale, owner of the mill, sent a representative with a polite offer, funding for the school, a promotion, a warning wrapped in a smile. Mara tore it up. That was when Black Hollow decided she was dangerous. The night Elias worked overtime, Mara stayed home organizing files. At 2:17 a.m. accelerant soaked into the floorboards. At 2:18 a.m. fire climbed the walls faster than fear. At 2:19 a.m. neighbors smelled smoke. At 2:20 a.m. they closed their windows. No one called for help until the roof collapsed. By the time Elias arrived, the house was already a grave. They told Elias it was faulty wiring. They said it gently. They said it quickly. No investigation. No questions. When Elias screamed at the sheriff, Donnelly leaned close and whispered, "Best let the dead rest." That sentence carved something permanent into Elias. Elias did not heal. He hollowed out. He stopped eating. He stopped sleeping. He stopped being human. At Mara's grave, he realized something terrifying. The town was relieved. Relieved it was over. Relieved it wasn't them. That was when Elias Crow died. Not in fire. In silence. He left Black Hollow before dawn. No farewell. No closure. Only a promise he never spoke aloud. He would return. Not as a victim, but as a consequence. Revenge is not built on anger. Anger burns too fast. Revenge is built on patience. For years, Elias studied systems, their loopholes, their lies, their hunger. He learned finance, law, corporate structures. He worked for people who destroyed lives with signatures and learned how they slept at night. He changed his name. Caleb Rowe sounded clean. Trustworthy. Invisible in the right way. And slowly, carefully, he became dangerous. When Caleb Rowe arrived in Black Hollow 10 years later, the town welcomed him. Money always received forgiveness. He smiled. He invested. He listened. And beneath every handshake, every dinner, every donation, he counted. Names mattered. Elias Crow carried fire, loss, and history. He needed something clean. He chose Caleb Rowe because it sounded forgettable. Trustworthy. The kind of name that passed background checks without resistance. He forged a new past. He built credit. He created references. Every detail was polished until even he almost believed it. Caleb Rowe did not have a dead wife. Caleb Rowe had ambition. And ambition opened doors. Revenge requires rehearsal. Caleb didn't return to Black Hollow immediately. That would have been emotional. Sloppy. Fatal. Instead, he tested himself on other corrupt systems. A housing developer laundering money through shell companies. A factory dumping waste into poor neighborhoods. A city council taking bribes behind closed doors. Caleb dismantled them quietly. Whistleblower leaks. Strategic investments. Anonymous reports timed perfectly. He never stayed to watch the fallout. He didn't need to. What mattered was proof, to himself, that the system bled when cut precisely. Mara never stopped appearing in his dreams. Sometimes she screamed. Sometimes she asked why he hadn't saved her. Sometimes she just looked tired. He woke up soaked in sweat, fists clenched, heart racing. Once, he whispered into the dark, "I'm almost ready." He wasn't sure who he was saying it to. 10 years passed. Black Hollow remained. The mill still operated. The river still ran poisoned. The men responsible still walked free. That was when Caleb knew. Waiting longer would not make the revenge cleaner. It would only make him weaker. He booked a one-way ticket back. Black Hollow greeted Caleb Rowe warmly. They always welcomed money. The mayor shook his hand. Local papers ran flattering profiles. The mill owner, Victor Hale, invited him to dinner. Caleb smiled easily. No one recognized him. That was the cruelest victory of all. Caleb spent months doing nothing aggressive. He listened. He learned which councilman drank too much. Which accountant cooked the books. Which secretary hated her boss enough to talk. He mapped relationships the way generals mapped battlefields. Victor Hale was the center. Councilman Pike was the shield. Sheriff Donnelly was the threat. And the town? The town was still afraid. The first strike wasn't loud. Caleb funded independent water testing programs, under the guise of charity. He paid doctors to publish studies. He gave journalists documents they couldn't ignore. Parents panicked. The town murmured. Victor Hale dismissed it publicly, but privately, he began losing sleep. Caleb noticed. Sheriff Donnelly felt it first. Men like him always did. Something was wrong. The air felt watched. He ran background checks on Caleb Rowe. They came back clean. That scared him more than guilt ever could. Protests began near the mill. Parents demanded answers. State regulators announced interest. Victor Hale snapped at his employees. Councilman Pike stopped smiling. Caleb watched it all like a man tending a slow fire. Victor Hale invited Caleb to his office. "You're hurting the town," Hale said. Caleb leaned forward slightly. No, he replied. I'm showing it the mirror. Hale's eyes hardened. Threats followed. Caleb documented every one. Anonymous evidence reached federal agencies. Financial crimes. Environmental violations. Obstruction of justice. The case was airtight. When Victor Hale was arrested, the town gathered in silence. Some cried. Some watched with relief. Caleb felt nothing. Sheriff Donnelly saw Caleb across the street one afternoon and froze. Something about the posture. The eyes. Memory stirred. That night, Donnelly drank too much and stared at an old case file. Mara Crow. Fear finally arrived. Sheriff Donnelly hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every sound outside his house felt deliberate. Every car that slowed made his hand twitch toward the gun he kept beside his bed. He told himself it was stress, just the town unraveling, just politics turning ugly. But deep down, he knew better. Names have weight. And Crow had returned to him like a splinter working its way out of flesh. He pulled the old file from his safe. Yellowed pages. Burned photos. A rushed report signed by his own hand. Faulty wiring. He stared at the signature. For the first time in 10 years, Donnelly wondered if the past could still reach up and grab a man by the throat. Caleb sensed Donnelly's fear before he ever confirmed it. Fear changes behavior. It makes powerful men sloppy. Donnelly started tailing him personally. Parked across the street too long. Asked the wrong people the wrong questions. Caleb allowed it. Predators didn't chase prey that didn't run. There had always been one problem with the fire. No witnesses. Or so the town believed. Caleb found her by accident, or what looked like accident. An elderly woman living 3 towns over. Dementia beginning to fray her edges. Her husband had died years earlier. She had lived next door to Elias and Mara. When Caleb showed her a photo of the house, her hands began to shake. I saw men, she whispered. They told me not to remember. Caleb didn't rush her. He waited. Some truths surface only when they feel safe. Councilman Pike made a mistake. He drank too much at a fundraiser and spoke too freely to a woman he thought admired him. He bragged. Laughed. Recalled that teacher who wouldn't shut up. The woman was wearing a wire. Caleb had paid for it. The recording traveled fast. Pike resigned the next morning. The town woke up to sirens. Donnelly finally confronted him in private. Who are you? He demanded. Caleb met his eyes calmly. Someone who remembers, he said. That was when Donnelly reached for his gun. And that was when state police poured in. Caleb hadn't called them that day. He'd called them months ago. At the station, Caleb handed over his final piece of identification. The room went silent. Elias Crow, an officer, read aloud. Donnelly's knees buckled. The ghost had a name again. Once the name was spoken, the dam broke. Accelerant traces. Witness testimony. Financial records linking Hale, Pike, and Donnelly. The fire was no longer an accident. It was a message. And the message had failed. Courtroom was packed. Parents. Teachers. Workers who had coughed blood and stayed silent. Donnelly refused to look at Elias. Victor Hale stared with hatred. Councilman Pike cried. Elias testified last. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask for mercy. He told them who Mara was. That was enough. Guilty. All of them. Sentences fell like stones. The town exhaled for the first time in decades. Justice didn't roar. It whispered. Afterward, Elias felt empty. No triumph. No joy. Just exhaustion. Revenge had kept him alive. But it could not teach him how to live. That lesson came later. He returned to the empty land where his house had stood. Grass had grown wild. He placed a small plaque there. Mara Crow. She spoke the truth. He stayed until sunset. Then he left. Black Hollow changed. Slowly. Imperfectly. The river began to heal. Children stopped coughing. People learned to speak. Elias moved on. Not healed. But lighter. Some fires destroy. Others burn away what should never have existed. This one did both. When the trials ended, silence returned to Black Hollow, but this time it was different. Before, silence had been fear pretending to be peace. Now it was exhaustion. The mill gates were locked. Rust crept across the chains. Workers gathered outside some mornings out of habit, then slowly stopped coming. The river still carried poison in its memory, but the flow had begun to change. Elias stayed in town longer than he planned. Not because he loved it, but because leaving too fast felt like running again. Sheriff Donnelly aged quickly behind bars. Power drained from him the way blood drains from a wound, slowly, then all at once. Other inmates didn't care who he used to be. One night, Donnelly finally wrote a letter. It was never sent. He burned it instead. Some men only learn truth when there is no one left to hear it. Elias tried once to imagine rebuilding the house on Alder Street. New walls. New roof. New memories. The thought made him physically sick. Some places were not meant to be restored. They were meant to be remembered and left behind. Sorting through old storage, Elias found Mara's notebooks. Not evidence. Not reports. Thoughts. Fears. Hope. One line stopped him, "If something happens to me, I hope Elias doesn't become empty." He closed the book and cried for the first time since the fire. Elias left Black Hollow quietly. This time, not as a ghost. He began consulting, unofficially. Helping towns fight corporations. Teaching people how systems hid corruption. He never stayed long. He never gave his full name. But fire stopped following him. Mara still appeared in his dreams. But she no longer screamed. She walked beside him. Sometimes ahead of him. Sometimes smiling. He woke calmer. That scared him at first. Then it healed him. Years passed. Black Hollow shrank. Then slowly reshaped itself. A park replaced the mill grounds. The river ran clearer. Children played without coughing. The town never became perfect. But it became honest. The plaque on Alder Street remained. People didn't vandalize it. Didn't decorate it. They treated it like a grave without bones. Teachers brought students there sometimes. They told them about a woman who spoke when it was dangerous. Elias aged quietly. Gray hair. Slower steps. But lighter shoulders. He lived alone, but not lonely. He learned that solitude and emptiness were not the same thing. Some nights, he talked to Mara out loud. He believed she heard him. Once, a young journalist asked him, "Do you think revenge was worth it?" Elias thought for a long time. Then he said, "It wasn't revenge. It was remembering." Near the end of his life, Elias returned to Black Hollow one last time. No one recognized him. That felt right. He sat by the river and watched clean water move past his feet. The fire was truly gone. At the old lot, Elias whispered, "I didn't save you. But I didn't forget you." The wind moved through the grass. That was answer enough. When Elias Crow died, it wasn't in fire. It was in sleep. Peaceful. Unremarkable. Just the way he would have wanted. Some stories end with explosions. This one ended with quiet. And for the first time, quiet meant peace. If this story stayed with you. If Elias and Mara's journey left a mark somewhere in your chest. Hit like. And if you want more long, dark, slow-burn revenge stories like this one, subscribe and stay with me. Some stories aren't just told. They're survived.